I'm also one of the leaders of the Uncommitted national movement. We've been making a request of the Democratic National Convention for a Palestinian American to speak from this stage.
It is absolutely ridiculous that the Democratic National Convention is not doing the right thing here. So there is a lot of support right now for the Uncommitted movement's request to have a Palestinian speak on stage at the Democratic National Convention. And so far, they've been denied. And support is coming from all over the place, including from the United Auto Workers, all the way to the family of an Israeli hostage victim, all calling on the DNC to include a Palestinian in the list of speakers. So I'm going to go over this story as well as share a couple of clips, one from the Uncommitted movement, another from Ilhan Omar and her recent criticisms of Antony Blinken and just the ridiculous foreign policy of the Biden administration. But first, I want to give some context here, just a quick, 10,000-foot view of how insane it is that so little has been said about Palestinians and the ongoing genocide during the Democratic National Convention. So for context here, in the war in Ukraine, Russia's war in Ukraine, the war has killed more than 11,100 civilians and injured at least 21,000 people. So these numbers, by the way, this is the latest I could find. This is from July 8th. Now, I'm doing this comparison, not to diminish what's going on here, but to simply showcase that it is wild that this is properly acknowledged and discussed, yet the attack on Palestinians is almost completely ignored. So the death toll in Gaza has surpassed 40,000. And researchers fear the death toll could reach 186,000. And those are estimates based on malnutrition, healthcare shortages, and unsanitary conditions that are inevitable due to the ongoing bombardment of Gaza by the far right-wing Israeli government. Now, the reason why one is allowed to be discussed while the other isn't, at least to the same degree, is that Israel continues to be an ally of the U.S. So when an ally commits a genocide, it's okay, apparently. But when your enemy in Russia does it, well, of course, we got to focus on that. A genocide is a genocide. Mass killing of civilians is mass killing of civilians, regardless of who it's being done to or who is doing it. So the complete, I was going to say lack of awareness. It's not lack of awareness. Just this complete lack of desire to represent the humanity of Palestinians is just completely, it's disgusting. And it's not even just about, I'm going to get to the clip here in a second and this request, but it isn't even just about the obvious lack of humanity here. Like, that part is a given. But it's also just based on politics alone, it is the right thing to do. There aren't voters that are going to stay home and not vote for the Democratic Party because you spoke to the humanity of Palestinians during a genocide. But there are going to be people that will stay home because they feel like Harris and the Democratic Party aren't doing enough to address the genocide. From both a human rights and a political point of view, it makes absolutely no sense to deny this request. So I'm going to play this video here from the Uncommitted movement. And in case you're not familiar, the Uncommitted movement, as The Guardian writes here, rocked Biden over Gaza. So they set a goal of 10,000 votes for Uncommitted. And again, this was organized particularly about the ongoing genocide in Gaza and Biden's lack of desire to do anything about it. The organizers set a goal of 10,000 votes. They ended up getting more than 101,000 votes in the Michigan primary. So that's about 13% of those who voted cast ballots for Uncommitted. And in the process, won 2 delegates, which is why they're even at the Democratic National Convention. So let me play this clip here from the movement and the recent denial by the DNC to have a Palestinian speaker on stage.
Hello, everyone. It's 2:10 a.m. My name is Abbas Alawi. I'm an Uncommitted delegate from Michigan. I'm also one of the leaders of the Uncommitted national movement. we've been making a request of the Democratic National Convention for a Palestinian American to speak from this stage. We talked to members of Congress, we talked to party leaders, we told them all we need a Palestinian American to speak from this stage. And we were negotiating with the Democratic Party. We were telling them, hey, here's a long list of Palestinian Americans you can choose from. And they said, okay, we're considering it. We can't tell you yes, but we also are not telling you no, and that's a good thing. A few hours ago, they called and said, I have an answer for you. The answer is no. And that was all they said. We think that's unacceptable. We think that this is the party where we shouldn't be silencing people's voices, even when we have disagreements about policy. And so we sat right here, me and my fellow delegates who ran out of options on the inside. So we're standing here on the outside, leaning into our power as regular, everyday people and asking you to join us in asking the party. We need to see a Palestinian American speaker from this stage. Today, Thursday is the last day of the convention. They need to add someone to the program immediately. I have my phone on, it's being charged. I'm waiting for the call from the DNC. They know about this. The vice president and her team know about this. The president and his team know about this. We're waiting to hear from them. Hopefully they'll take the opportunity to unite our party and make sure that there's room for a Palestinian American from the stage. Please join us.
So even though they've been denied by the Democratic National Convention, they're still holding out hope that that's going to change based on the amount of pressure that has already, just overnight, been amassed in support of having a Palestinian speak on stage. And I'm going to get to an example of one of the potential speakers that they were floating. And they even, I was reading, the movement even agreed to allowing the speech to get approved before going on stage. There is, and regardless, like that shouldn't have to be a request they would have to agree to, but this is a situation where you have to acknowledge what is going on. If this party is claiming to care about human rights and Harris is claiming to go in a different direction, even if she feels like she can't be specific due to the fact that this is an ongoing issue and the worry that Netanyahu may try to pull the U.S. into a regional war if she plays her hand too early. I get all of that. This has nothing to do with that. We are talking about a speaker on stage at the DNC speaking to this incredibly important issue of a genocide. To deny this is to simply deny human rights. You cannot call yourself the party of human rights if you deny the ability for a speaker to speak to a genocide. Now, so the parents of a Hamas, I'm going to bring this up, or I'm bringing this up because you're going to see later a different victim or family of a victim of an Israeli hostage has come out to support a Palestinian speaker. But as NBC News reported, so this, I believe the speech was last night, parents of Hamas hostage plead for his release at the Democratic Convention. So John Pollan and Rachel Goldberg were allowed to go up there and speak to the fact that their son was kidnapped. So Representative Ruah Roman from Georgia, potentially one of the speakers, one of the Palestinian speakers, or at least a name that was floated out there, writing here, my speech urged us to unite behind Harris, criticized Trump, and spoke about the promise of this moment. The only reason we're doing this is to save the soul of our party and prevent bad actors from using our pain in an ongoing voter suppression campaign. So that was in response to somebody claiming, Maddie Iglesias here, claiming that, oh, they're just going to, go up there and talk shit about Harris. No, they want to speak to the actual issue. They want to speak to what is going on. So in response to that, Elena Zaitchik, who, I'll get to who she is in a second, but speaking here about Rachel and John deserved every second on that stage. I also believe a Palestinian American voice deserves to be heard on that stage. I'd love to hear from Ruah for Georgia, and I hope the DNC will give her the chance to be heard. So Monica Marks replies to Elena there saying, this is a post from Elena Zaitchik, an Israeli-American hostage family member. I watched the Jewish Woman for Harris Zoom. Elena was both the only Israeli hostage family who spoke and the call's one speaker who talked about Palestinians' enormous suffering. Her humanity is strong. The call last Thursday was one of upteen reminders that Israeli victims and hostages' families are often the sole voices afforded the trust and credibility to speak out against this violence and to speak up on behalf of suffering Palestinians. It really shows you just a again, I want to say blind spot. It's not a blind spot. This it, it's anti-Palestinian to not allow these speakers to not give these sorts of individuals a platform. Yet, what is said here about when it comes to Israeli victims, why is it okay for them to speak about Palestinian humanity, but you can't have a Palestinian do it? So, as I said earlier, the UAW also came out to support this. If we want the war in Gaza to end, we can't put our heads in the sand or ignore the voices of the Palestinian Americans in the Democratic Party. If we want peace, if we want real democracy, and if we want to win this election, the Democratic Party must allow a Palestinian American speaker to be heard from the DNC stage tonight. I want to play this clip from Ilhan Omar, just speaking on this issue.
Ask yourselves, how does our Secretary of State travel 11 times begging for an end to a situation that we truly have continued to provide the bombs and the weapons that are creating that situation? How do we allow, where is our patriotism, where is our dignity? How do we allow our Secretary of State to go into Israel, say we are close to securing a ceasefire, now for the 11th time, to leave for Egypt, only for Bibi Netanyahu to have a press conference right after him and say, we are not taking a deal that ends this war? How are we not ashamed that that is the humiliation that our administration's representatives are faced with? It is not only the hypocrisy of saying we are a country that cares about human rights. It is not just the hypocrisy of saying we care about the rule of law. It is not just the hypocrisy of saying we respect international law. But it's also the humiliation. We are the most powerful nation, supplying billions of dollars to a country that is waging genocide against people who have been occupied, who have faced apartheid, who have been displaced.
That is both a great summary and also an important reminder of who has been the barrier to progress here. It hasn't been leadership in Gaza. It's been Israel and the U.S. When you claim as the U.S. government that, you're working really hard with Israel on a ceasefire, really, really hard, yet you continue giving them weapons, you continue giving them bombs to drop on children, you have the power to end that. But because Israel is a strategic ally, we can't. No, we got to work something out while they continue bombing innocent civilians. While you continue claiming that you care deeply about this issue and putting an end to it. There has been, 2, 3, 4 times where Netanyahu has denied a ceasefire deal. Yet they continue trying to claim, it's Hamas. They're denying it. No, the deal has been in front of Netanyahu several times. The families of hostages in Israel have gone to him pleading to accept a ceasefire so they can bring their families home. And he has denied it because it would mean the end of his power in the country. It's a completely deplorable situation. And the Democratic Party, the Harris campaign, the Biden administration, the DNC should be happy, should be on their hands and knees thanking the Uncommitted movement that all they are asking for right now is for a Palestinian to be able to go on stage and speak to the genocide. Because they could be asking for a lot more. And a good example of that, here's a breakdown from Heidi Matthews, who's done a really good job breaking down and describing the various cases that the UN has brought to Israel and Netanyahu. She answers the question of what is Free Palestine? You often hear Free Palestine. Here's what that means. So Free Palestine looks like the end of Israel's unlawful military occupation. It looks like the removal of settlements. It looks like the return of stolen land. It looks like reparations. And then it looks like whatever the Palestinian people freely determines for itself. These are all things that the Uncommitted movement could be right now demanding of the Harris campaign, of the Democratic Party. And many of them, to be clear, are. Like, this calling for a speaker at the DNC isn't the only thing they want. But they understand the limitations right now on a campaign and the limitations on somebody who is in the current administration and isn't the top dog, isn't the president. And right now, all they are asking for is for someone to speak to the genocide at the DNC. I hope that, this pressure will continue. I hope the pressure gets to the DNC and they allow this, because it's just not even just a massive oversight. It's spitting in the face of not just Palestinians, that's obvious, but spitting in the face of anybody that cares about actual human rights.